Why do we need live local theater and poetry in the 21st century? How do we get the words off the page, onto the stage, and into the hearts and minds of audiences? How do we get audiences to give us their live attention when the drama on the screen is better than it's ever been? Celebrity-studded, better funded, and better marketed than anything you or I can produce locally. This is Running Lines. These are some of the questions we'll be asking. Hi, welcome to the second episode of Running Lines. This is our show about local theater and poetry and the challenge of getting the words to the stage from the page. My name is Alicia Grega. This is my co-host,
Milton Howitzer,
otherwise known as Mark Zdancewicz. We've got the Diva behind Diva Theater, artistic director of the Diva production company, Paige Balitski, and you've been doing that for a long time.
Since Moses was a child, yes.
Long enough. And we've also brought in a special guest today, Marcie Herman Riebe, who is the author of a new play that you're not going to get to see until May. It's called Pockets, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that. It is Women's History Month, March, and 2020 is the 100-year anniversary of women's suffrage. That's women getting the right to vote. So I thought it would be fun to talk about Pockets because there's a few scenes in there that relate to that. And we're also going to talk about women in theater in general today. I want to start with a quote from a book that I've been reading. It's about women's suffrage. It's by Elaine Weiss. She wrote, "It's too easy to imagine that the enfranchisement of American women simply arrived, like some evolutionary imperative, a natural step in the gradual march of progress, or as a gift eventually bestowed by wise men on their grateful wives, daughters, and sisters. The women asked politely, staged a few picturesque marches, hoisted a few picket signs, and without much drama, votes for women was achieved. But that's not how it happened. The very idea that women should have the right to participate in a government by and for the people was long considered radical, even dangerous in the United States. Despite Abigail Adams' exhortation in 1776 to her husband John to remember the ladies when forming the new American democracy, our esteemed founding fathers had absolutely no intention of giving women a voice in public affairs. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, women were condemned from the pulpit and in the press for thinking about suffrage. They were spit upon and pelted with rotten eggs for speaking about it, and they were jailed for demanding it." Did you know that, Mark?
No. I didn't know.
And if I didn't read that to you right now, you might not have found out, because nobody is talking about this being the 100-year anniversary of women getting the right to vote.
And I don't understand why. I really thought, starting in January, the airwaves, the local shows, the national shows, would hit upon this. I know it's an election year and everyone is, focused on who's running and what's going on and who said this about whatever. But they fail to realize that this is a huge anniversary. Mm-hmm. Some of these politicians would have never been in office if it wasn't for the women's vote.
They don't want people to realize what it was like before. It's the same thing with slavery. I had a friend, Chris, and we did this tour in Delaware. He was writing a screenplay about the Underground Railroad, and we were visiting Underground Railroad sites, and we had to actually find them. There was no signs, no anything. Nobody wanted to say this was an Underground Railroad site, because that would mean that there was slavery and people who were for slavery. And it must be the same thing with women's rights.
Yeah, it took 3 generations, about 70 years or so of fighting for that 19th Amendment to get passed. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about Marcie's play, Pockets, is because it's not completely about just that moment in time, but it's about a lot of moments in time. Do you want to give us a little background on how you came to this project, what you do in general, and what it means to you?
Sure. We had talked in fall of 2018, right, about having a show that would celebrate the passing of the 19th Amendment and the 100 years. And we started researching and reading things, but no one really came up with anything. And it was May of last year, and I said, "Oh, we better do something." And I had been reading a lot of primers about the suffrage movement and different feminist authors, but nothing really seemed to click as something that could be a play. And then one of my friends posted a poem that had pockets in it, and that was really what started the play. I said to my friends online, and Paige was in that group, I said, what kinds of things do you have in your pockets? And then I just started pairing up things that went in pockets with different aspects of the history of American women, and that's how Pockets came about.
Yeah, I was lucky to get to Mark was
I
sick.
didn't. I was sick.
But I got to go to the second read-through of the script. There were so many people there that we didn't all fit around a table.
Good.
There's 43
exciting.
characters in this play. It's kind of vignettes, would you say? Series of vignettes.
Yes.
And early on, there's just so many great lines, but early on, I heard a quest for pockets and the power they hold. And it's not that it's a conspiracy that women's clothes are designed without them, right? But
Although we do raise that as a question in the play.
it's an interesting idea, right? Especially when we hear about some of the things that women do keep in their pockets.
Wait, I didn't know that.
All right, so just for example, and Mark, that's right. Women's clothing, if they do have pockets, are nothing more than maybe an inch or an inch and a half. And
Okay.
the argument is that if you put pockets
Yes.
that men have, it would make the women
Look.
chubby through the hips or whatever. Well, I think that's ridiculous. But that's I have a pair of pants on right now. No pockets.
That's why
no
the people
pockets.
get so excited on Project Runway when
When
they
they have pockets.
pockets in the dresses.
Yes.
I have to
See,
tell-
you know.
And when we have events going on and you have to go get dresses, one of the things that I look for is a dress with pockets. I know.
I mean, I never
Yeah.
thought
It's a
of
big
that.
deal.
Because you don't have to.
No, I
No.
didn't
You've
have
got
to.
men's
But if
clothing. You have
didn't,
pockets.
you would have to carry a purse like
Of
we're
course.
almost forced to carry. I mean, I do see some of the younger folks that, they put their credit card and their phone in their back pocket if they have one.
Right.
So they don't have to carry a purse. But I always worry about, what's going to happen to that credit card and that phone when you sit on it.
Sit
But
on
that's
it.
a whole nother show.
Yeah, there was another line that Marcy came up with. Going out without a purse is a power move. Is that yours?
It's in one of the
Is it-
memes
it's one of
that's
the
in the
memes,
projections in the play.
That
cool.
was fun. The fact that you could find that many memes that were pocket related,
And that was just
goes to show
scratching-
that this is a thing.
It was the
Just
tip of the
scratching the
iceberg.
surface.
Yeah.
There's so many. There's so many.
Right. So it's just another example of things being designed for women without their input.
But you also have to
High
remember
heels.
that early on, it was all men that designed clothing.
Yes.
Women didn't design clothing. Women were seamstresses if something had to be repaired or made from scratch that was probably something domestic. The high end had private seamstresses and milliners to make hats. But no, it was designed
men.
by men. The women sewed them in the factories, but the men
Right.
designed them.
We were talking about that before we came into the studio about, well, we're going to be talking shortly about women in theater and how thankfully that's changed. We still have a way to go, but women in tech in theater is probably the worst case scenario that we have to look at. And Mark was saying about how
Costume designers in
Right.
Hollywood in the early 20s and 30s and 40s were all men, except for maybe Edith Head.
Edith Head. Edith Head. Absolutely.
But they were all men. You'd look at the credits and it was Mr. or Monsieur, something.
Same with makeup.
Yeah,
Yeah,
everything.
absolutely.
yeah. So that's a thing. But I don't think we're done with pockets yet.
Okay.
No.
Are
Don't.
we?
No.
So we kind of know where
So
it
much more to talk about.
came from.
That's why it's okay.
I know. It's
I feel so
fascinating, isn't it?
stupid. No,
We're
it
here
really
to educate.
is.
We're here to educate.
really is.
And that's part of the idea behind it.
Right, is the educational
Things
aspect of it.
that people maybe didn't think about.
Sure.
Maybe they'll start to think about them.
And there is a lot of, I think you did a really good job, Marcy, of kind of getting information in there and history in there. And there's some real people, there's some fictional people, and I was grateful, to say, oh, I'm a women's studies minor. I know who most of these people are. I've heard this story before. I'm kind of familiar, with Betty Friedan and all of that. So, there's that scene with the mother's little helper pills in the 50s.
Mother's little helper.
And I'm like, that was a thing. That was
Yes.
real.
Right.
Like, I remember even in college, I met a kid whose mother was like one of those women who was like addicted to Valium before any of the, opiates and benzos and
Absolutely.
stuff that we've got going on today is going on. This isn't new, They were trying to keep those women quiet.
Yeah.
Keep them subdued, keep them at home, taking care of the kids and cooking and doing all these things that, I would tear my hair out if I had to do every day. So, I don't know.
Gee.
We also have pockets for Mace when you have to walk home alone at night. That was a good one.
Yeah.
The modern woman who discovers the feminist classic and is reassured she's not the only one
That's one of my
that doesn't
favorites.
want to have kids.
It's one of my favorites.
That's me. That's probably the scene that's the most Marcy. And I get a little
Did you
teary.
read Fear of Flying and like have
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had my women's studies, intro to women's studies professor said, oh, you should check out this book. And I said, okay. It was written before I was born. Why would I read this book? But she was right. I should have read it, and I'm glad that I did. But that was the part that spoke to me, and I was excited to be able to put that in the play.
Mm-hmm. And it's wonderful to know that young women like Marcy had someone say to her, you should read this book. When it first came out, of course, I was a young woman, and the joke was, have you read The Fear of Flying? And I would actually hear women say, oh, I don't like to fly. And I'm thinking, you need this book more than you know. You need this book.
Is that Erica John?
Yes.
Yes.
And
Very
it was,
good.
And it was
Good job, Mark.
considered, and it was considered pornographic. It was, you should read this, it's smut, it's this and whatever, which only made the sales go up. And there was a lot of, in another room reading. Yeah.
Yeah, there's that scene. You just reminded me of that scene in Mad Men where they're passing around
Yes.
that book. I think it was like in the first season.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Lady Chatterley's Lover? I don't
Yeah.
I think so.
It was?
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
so.
Sometimes my brain just makes connections that don't exist.
But we believe them, and it's okay.
You're like, sure, whatever you say. I like that. So there's men's ignorance of the female anatomy was another great point that I loved. And you said early in the reading that you did that it was written for all ages and backgrounds. And I got the idea with 43 parts, and I'm thinking you're probably going to cast a lot of people.
We hope to. I mean,
Yeah.
isn't that the
And
end
so part of that
game?
is to get people involved, because I know, like, if I were directing that, I'd be like, okay, we're going to have 8 actors and they're going to play all the parts. But this is why I think it's really important that we have people like Paige that are at the helm of theaters that will say, whatever you want, Marcy.
Right.
And pretty much that's what I said to her. When we discussed the project early on, my job at that point was to say to her, go, write, do whatever you need to do. We did a read. She and I met, and I said, well, think about this. You might want to do something with this. I'd like to see this made a little more broad in what is being said. And then she went back and rewrote it, and we had the second read, and other than one line, it was ready to go.
Wow.
It was ready to go. She's a very good writer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But as a producer, and I have to put the producer's hat on, I'm sure you're all aware, and I don't, it's like preaching to the choir, but for anyone who doesn't understand, community theater relies, just like Blanche Dubois, on the kindness of strangers. If you don't buy a ticket and sit in those seats, then there's not enough money to be made through that production to go to the next production. Some companies have very elaborate angels and subscriptions, and that's fine. In our case, we have a tiny black box theater. It seats 60 people. When you're doing a show that is unknown, you run the risk of people not coming because, you know, it doesn't have the name. On the other hand, if you do a show that is well known, and I don't want to pick on Neil Simon because I do enjoy a good Neil Simon from time to time, but people come. But you have to pay rights and royalties for that. So by the time you get done paying the rights and royalties and the cost of the other production aspects, then your balance is down to like that wonderful, you know, hey gang, we made $30, but that doesn't pay for the next thing. So as a producer and a new work, although I love this piece, my word is not just going to sell tickets. I say cast 35, 40 people. I will find places for them to sit in the back. And
You only have one bathroom.
well, yes. It's a family show. We won't go there. But the thing is, those people will bring people.
Yeah.
And part of what Bob and I have said from day one is it's not just to entertain people. It's to educate people.
Yep.
It's to elevate people. And if there's something that we can do that makes that much of a difference in a situation where if I was to go on the street right now and say to the first woman, what's the 19th Amendment? What do you think I would get for a response?
Oh, I don't even want to think about it.
Prohibition?
Okay, then let me just, all right. So the other day on television,
Oh, did you do this experiment? Somebody did.
it was on the Holocaust because it's the 75th anniversary
Oh
of,
my
of
gosh.
the liberation of the concentration camps. They interviewed, I believe it was 100 people. 46 out of 100 average on the street people did not know what Auschwitz was. 26 of them never heard of the Holocaust. These things frighten me. So I think the 19th Amendment needs to be talked about. The younger generation of women need to understand with the older generation of women, not just my generation, the generation before me, the generation before them, and so on.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, it's something as simple as in my generation, we weren't allowed to have a credit card. As a woman, I was not allowed to have a credit card unless my husband's name was on it. It didn't say my name, it said his name. It sounds barbaric, doesn't it? But
It
that
does.
that's true.
It sounds absurd. It sounds so
But
absurd.
it's true.
And we could go back.
Oh, let's hope not.
Right. So the suffragettes
Yes.
used theater
Yes.
to get the word out about what they were doing. And now, 100 years later or
Here
more,
we are.
we are using theater to get the word out about what they did in a way that is not just preachy or classroom, but entertaining and interesting.
Yeah, we don't want it to be a dry history lesson.
And it's not.
And it's not. Marcy has written a beautiful
Good,
piece.
thanks.
There's humor in it. There's some very serious moments. And then there's some, gee, I never knew that moments, which I love in an original piece.
Yeah, and the characters are distinct too. I noticed that they all sound different. I mean, you got a good feel for the different time periods, and this is your first full-length play, though, right?
It is.
It
is. I've only written one act before.
Great. So, how did you studied with the Diva group, or?
Yeah, I was in the scene study group, and we have a Diva dramatists writing group for aspiring playwrights in the area. And we've actually had several
Yes.
of our one acts come out of that group. So.
Right. And you've been in quite a few productions lately too.
Yes.
Is it like a recent bug that you caught, or
when
no?
was
You've been doing it for a
Smell of the
while?
Kill? When was that? 2017.
Yes.
2017. I saw the audition event
Uh-huh.
for the play, and I just went, see what happens, and
Right.
Paige had faith in me to make me an understudy, and here we are.
Well, yeah. I made her the understudy, and she was faithful, and she was at rehearsal, and she knew her lines. And lo and behold, we had an actress who unfortunately could not do opening. There was
Opening night.
Yeah, there was some.
It's like 42nd
Yeah,
Street.
and believe me, it was a very involved thing. It wasn't anything that this person could rearrange in their life, and it was quite serious. And I said to Marcy, "This is why understudies are so important. Your opening." So she did the preview and the open. Is that what you did? The preview and open?
Yeah, 2 nights.
Did a great job.
Yeah.
Great job.
It was
And that
scary.
was it. You were sold. We got your
Well,
soul.
I mean, I had done theater in high school, and I just it came back. The bug is back.
Yeah.
So here I am.
And hooray for us. I mean, that's, and you know, in community theater, you open the doors and you're happy when people come through, but we've been very fortunate. We have very creative people who have come through those doors and have contributed immensely to the theater that we run.
I think almost everyone starts out with acting. I know I did. In high school, and I was really fortunate that I had a drama teacher who saw that acting wasn't enough for me. I wanted more. I didn't know what more was, but she let me adapt a short story into a play. So I think that was probably the first script I ever wrote, and I didn't realize it. I wasn't thinking about it that way. And I got to be the assistant director on, we did The Lottery, Shirley Jackson. And, I'll never forget that. That was, and I think it was that, because acting, I was like always 30, you know? I still am. But there just weren't roles for me to play as a teenage actress. I didn't fit anything that existed. And I think that was one of the reasons I wanted to write, because I wanted to make parts that I could play or somebody like me could play, and I think a lot of people do that. You said earlier you couldn't find a show that fit the parameters that you were looking for, and I think I'm kind of working on a suffrage piece because I wanted to do something before the end of the year, and there's like a Jailed for Freedom, Doris Stevens, but there isn't a script.
Nope.
There's a movie,
Right.
Iron Jawed Angels, highly
Yep.
recommend it, but there's no play script that I
Nope.
could find, you know, except there's one I'll mention in a minute.
Oh.
British,
Wow.
which is a little different.
Maybe out of our range.
But yeah, so then I went to college and became a theater major my freshman year on my birthday.
Oh.
And playwriting was just like, I went right into it and took off from there. And I was like, oh, this is it. You know, but even now, it's still a quest for role models. I think that
Absolutely.
Women have had a bigger challenge finding them.
I think so too. And part of the reason we started the Diva Dramatists was, you know, one of the guys said, there aren't that many parts for women, are there? No, a lot of women come and fight over 3-4 roles.
If they're lucky.
If they're lucky. And so when we started that group, it was to try to write some plays that had more roles for women, that we could include more people from our community.
Why? Why aren't there more roles for women?
Well,
Think about that. Why aren't there?
until 1660,
There you go.
it was illegal for women to act on the English stage. King Charles II granted a charter to the Drury Lane requiring all female roles to be played by women. 1660. The first actress, do you guys remember?
Oh, God, no. I forgot.
On the English stage was Margaret Hughes. She played Desdemona.
Yep.
Oh.
Less than 16% of Shakespeare's characters are women.
That's right.
Yeah.
And when it comes to lines, Rosalind in As You Like It is probably Shakespeare's most robust
Yes.
female character. She has 721 lines. Hamlet has 1,506 lines. So pretty much twice, more than twice
Sure.
the amount of lines that
Because
Rosalind
the
has.
way Shakespeare wrote some of his male characters, especially Hamlet, Hamlet broods a lot. And he sits and he ponders and he talks more, and then he thinks about something else, and then he talks about it. And it's like, just say the words and move on, shall we? But yeah, it's true. But that's the way that Shakespeare wrote for men.
Right. If a woman did that, she'd be whining.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. But today, as early as today, I went to a publishing house site, and I typed in tragic comedy, 2 in the cast. I think that was it. Full-length play. Every play that came up was males.
Oh.
So we either have to start writing stuff, or we have to start doing more stuff by female writers that are nationally known. Sarah Rule being one of them, of course.
We mentioned the Clean House earlier. Was
yeah.
that before the cameras were rolling?
That was
Right,
before
it
the
was before.
cameras were
Oh,
rolling.
okay.
But Clean House is a prime example. It's a wonderful comedy. It was just done by Actor Circle last season, and it was beautifully done.
Who directed that?
Eric Lutz.
Eric Lutz.
Oh, he did?
He did.
Yeah.
So sorry I missed it.
Yeah, first time
I was in
directing.
grad school.
You were.
First time directing. He did a beautiful job. Marcy was in it. Did a phenomenal job.
Mark was in it.
I was
Mark
in it
was
too.
in it. Absolutely.
It was
but
a
it was
great
a
show.
beautiful show, written by a woman. And when I go back and I think about all the seasons, and there's been a few, I'm hard-pressed to think of how many plays by women I've actually produced.
Yeah. Sarah Rule's been produced a lot around here. I know
Yep.
she was actually here at the University
At
of
the university,
Scranton.
yep.
That was, I remember I got to write about her. I was really excited.
That's so cool.
They just did a production at King's College
Yep.
not too long ago. They
Eurydice.
did,
Yep.
Yeah, I missed that also. I wish
Yep.
I'd seen it.
Yeah, it's hard to get to everything.
Yeah, and she has several really wonderful shows, but Clean House is one of her best, I think.
I agree.
But if I was to say, okay, name some other, Nora Ephron.
Okay. Did she do stage plays also, or just screenplays?
No, she did both.
Oh, okay. I don't think I've ever
You can't do them.
encountered.
You can't do them. They won't release the right. When she passed away, the other sisters, they've held on to
Yeah.
all of it. No.
It'll probably be one of the reasons I haven't run into them.
Yeah. We can't do them.
Crimes
Yeah.
of the Heart. Who wrote Crimes of the Heart?
Beth.
Henley.
Henley.
Okay.
And Crimes of the Heart was huge.
It's been produced a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But has she done anything? I haven't seen anything.
We did, years and years ago, we did a play called Abundance. That was
Is
written
that
by
Beth?
Beth Henley.
Okay.
Oh, really?
I stand
Abundance
corrected.
is my favorite word.
Oh, I do love Abundance. I did see it. I did see Abundance when you did it. Yes.
That was with Rebecca.
Yes,
remember, and
Rebecca.
Kim.
Oh, brilliant actress. Rebecca, if you're out there, please go back on stage.
I remember when you guys did the Heidi Chronicles.
Yeah.
Heidi
There's
Chronicles.
there's more and more every day. And
Yes.
there's a lot that people just haven't heard of. They're being done if you live in bigger cities.
Yes.
If you live in Chicago,
Yeah.
you can go see a Rebecca Gilman play or somebody, newer
Right.
that's putting stuff out. There's a lot England just kind of beats us all the way around when it comes to new plays. Penelope Skinner.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many people I could go on for a while. Some of my favorites, Carol Churchill, Sarah Kane. They're all kind of out of that one
Right.
school that has inspired a lot of people.
But of course, they produce their works in England, which is wonderful for them, of course. But it takes a while to get them across the pond. And
Right.
even if you're aware of who they are and you like their work, and you want the rights to it, they're not available to you because England
Right.
has a hold on them.
Yeah, and their arts are subsidized in
Yes.
a better way. I would say a more generous
way.
And I think they have an attitude that I love, where not every play is necessarily supposed to be a forever masterpiece. They write plays; they're a product of their time. They're produced.
Oh.
They write more. They present more new work, and maybe not every play is going to be done 1,000
Right.
or 100 million times.
Right.
Timberlake Vertenbaker is one of my favorites. I know we talked about her,
Yeah.
and they have done Love of the Nightingale a couple times here.
There's a statistic I have about women playwrights on Broadway, it says that shows written by women earned an average of 18% higher revenue and sold 16% more tickets than plays written by men.
Really? Mm-hmm. Can we put that on a billboard?
Yes, that's lovely, but I would like to know who those women are. Who are they? Who are they? I'm thinking here.
Yeah, I know Heidi Schreck did really well with her play, What the Constitution Means to Me. Is that the title? Recently.
Oh, yes.
So that was big. And then Hadestown was big.
There you go. That's the one.
So this is probably
because it's still playing.
Recent.
It's still playing.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they said the reason says the relative success of work by women is not in any way, shape, or form proof that women are better writers than men.
Of course not.
Well, if it was the other way around, yeah.
A young male writer who shows promise receives a production and then a few more, and then he writes a hit. He develops his craft along the way. A young female writer who shows promise, however, is not as likely to be produced until she writes a hit. She must come to the table with her craft highly developed. So there's
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I think we're also more trained to respond to stories that have that traditional masculine arc, I like to call it, where the there's the rising action and the climax and and they look for protagonists who are aggressive,
absolutely,
and are goal oriented in a specific way. And I've had some conversations with one of my playwriting professors about this. What is a matriarchal aesthetic? Is there a way to write work that is more nurturing, that's more cooperative, that's maybe a play like Pockets, that isn't so much about some guy achieving something like getting the girl or whatever other life-defining goal he needs to accomplish in order to stroke his ego. But, I mean, I think women might have other motives when they're writing plays, other characters that are motivated by different things. And when you submit those plays to contests or whoever, they look at it and they're like, oh, well, your plot isn't shaped right, or your characters are too passive. And I know personally that's something I've come up against, and it's kind of something that as a playwright and as a scholar I'm working on writing about slowly, but I'll get there.
I never thought about that, about a difference between a play written by a man and a written by a woman. I never thought there was any difference.
Maybe there isn't, but maybe there is.
I would have to think that there has to be a difference.
Could you, if you read a play by a man and a play by a woman, could you tell which was which?
I've read some plays by men that, let me.
Okay.
All right. As you know, we do original one acts every January at the theater. We always put the word out that, just send them to me all year. I don't care. Full lengths, I'll take a look at them. And I had this one playwright who's written a lot of one acts and full length. And I read his stuff and I liked it, but I had one criticism. And I said to him, I need you to take a look at your female characters. To be honest with you, I don't believe any woman would say this in this situation. And pretty much that was the end of the relationship. The plays went, he went, and that was it. And I thought, I'm not trying to be difficult with you. I'm trying to make you a better playwright. Let's think this through. You're a man, I'm a woman. I've read this play, and no woman I know would utter these words. His response, I think, should have been, okay.
Right.
What do you hear a woman saying? Because just because there are men who write beautiful plays for women, who understand the characters that should be in the plays, understands the sensitivity of the role of the woman, what is going on, and the other side of it too, a stronger woman, a protagonist perhaps. But it's an art form.
Yeah. Things are changing. We have a bunch of statistics that we don't really have to get into right now. I think you can go look at the numbers yourself. More plays are. Well, we can't be here all day. We don't want to lose our audience. The numbers are getting better, and
Not by much.
The numbers of women in leadership positions
That's
is getting
changing.
better, and that's going to make a
That's
difference
changing.
too. And I think we just need to keep writing. We need to keep putting stuff out there.
Yep.
We need to keep playing with these notions of what strength is. And because I don't think it's just man woman. I think we might have talked about that, the whole yin yang thing. You know, it's the yin is what everyone wants, but there's something to be said for the yang too.
Yeah.
And maybe we can try to be more balanced as society. You know, but we're going to have to be our own role models. You know,
This is true.
and just keep doing it. Fight the fight, just like they did with women's suffrage.
Right.
It's true. And, you know,
100 years ago.
everything that we talk about, and I'm not trying to exclude you, but as women, you have to go back to them. Because where would we be without their sacrifices and the next generation's sacrifices and so on and so on. And we're in a very pivotal time again in women's history.
Yeah.
Without, saying a lot. I mean, there was a big trial that went on that is going to change the course of laws and how prosecutors handle trials.
Right.
It's-
who gets listened to, who gets taken
And
seriously.
who gets believed.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of stuff happening. And we're just glad that, we're part of that.
Right. So let's keep making change happen.
Well, Marcy's got to keep writing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That is our Women's History Month episode of Running Lines. Stay tuned for Pockets in May. They are having auditions March 23rd and 25th from 7 to 9 at the Old Brick Theater where Diva Productions live. If you're interested, get on Facebook, get some more information, and we'll be back next month with poetry.
Ooh.
Thanks.